studios in New York City. This is Charlie Rose.
Jeff Koons is having a moment. The New Yorker magazine calls him the most original, controversial, and expensive American artist of the past 3.5 decades. His playful and provocative work pushes the boundaries of both art and technical fabrication. Last November, his 10-foot stainless steel sculpture, Balloon Dog Orange, sold for $58.4 million. It is the most expensive piece of art ever sold by living artists at auction. And now New York's Whitney Museum of American Art is presenting Koons' first New York retrospective. It is the largest solo exhibition of an artist ever mounted at the museum. Here is a look.
I love Led Zeppelin, Charlie, yes. You know, I always like the way they make me feel. I feel like I come into contact with my feelings, and I've always loved them.
When you see all that you have done, and you know it's there in that museum, what do you think?
You know, it's been nice for me to look at some of the images because you know, I don't live with all of those pieces, so a lot of them are kind of just fresh to me again.
Yeah, owned by collectors and other people.
Owned by collectors, and you know, I tend to live with other art by other artists. Right. I'm in my studio all day long. I'm around my work, but so I don't live directly with my work. But you know, it shows to me that it's been fun. I think I've been doing exactly what I've been wanting to do. And it makes me feel more ambitious. I mean, I really would like to do something. I really want to put something on the table, and I think I've been having a dialogue, but I want to do more.
Is it a thing, or is it just simply many things? In other words, are you waiting? Are you inspired? Do you have something that has been there that you just can't wait to get on with the creation, and you know what it is?
Yeah, it's to exercise the freedom that we have for gesture, to, you know, experience the kind of the greatest amount of enlightenment that we can, and to do the things that, you know, what I really want to do in life, and to do it. And it's the things that you really want to do are the hardest things to do.
But haven't you been doing what you really want to do for a while?
I've been trying, you know, but I think that you can get better at it. You can get freer at it. You can give yourself more freedom. I think Picasso gave himself the most amount of freedom, you know, when he was 88, 89, 90 years of age. I mean, it's astounding how much freedom that he gave himself. And
what do you mean by freedom he gave himself?
You know, his works are so layered. They're so accomplished. They have so much energy. They have the energy of like a 24-year-old, but with all the wisdom and the knowledge and the layering that somebody who really has a kind of a cognitive consciousness, and so vast. I mean, the vast amount of human information are in those late works. Such a desire and possibilities of telling us what you can contribute to your own life and to your community, and at such a late age. I mean, it's it's
working
admirable.
on this retrospective, has it informed you and given you insight into self?
Yes, you know,
because it's there together. It's a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's in relationships.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think about how my kind of journey as an artist started, and it started by not having any idea of art, what the fine arts are. Art was presented to me really as a tool to draw, to replicate something, maybe to draw that coffee cup. Yeah. And when I was really young, I drew something like that, and my parents came up and kind of patted me on the back. And that gave me a sense of self. Yeah. But and it wasn't until I even got into college that I had any understanding that art is something much vaster. It's something that connects you so effortlessly to your community, to your society, and that you can deal with all the human disciplines so effortlessly. You can deal in psychology and philosophy and sociology. And the works at the Whitney are trying to have a discourse in a wide variety area of the human disciplines of what it means to be a human being and to flourish.
Yeah. I mean, you speak often about art for you is how it's received by the individual.
I think it's first kind of how I feel as a creator. We were talking about Zeppelin before. I mean, I like to feel. I like my senses to get excited, and physically I like to feel sensation, my eyes, I like excitement. I like from the senses to start to have ideas generated then, the mind and body together. And but then there's a point where you take on a moral responsibility to your community. I mean, I've already learned how to feel sensation myself and feel transcendence in my life. And automatically then you want to share that. You first, when you're younger, you think about sharing it with other artists, and then, you share with a broader community.
Is the reason you're doing this now because the Whitney was available, you now have the technology to do it, or you just simply found yourself at a moment in which you had enough and you wanted to see it in its entirety at a venue?
Well, I've wanted to have a show in New York for quite some time. And, there were different opportunities, but I think when the Whitney came to me with the space and they made
the entire museum,
which is fantastic, because Charlie, I've been working for many decades, and I think that we're showing probably about 35 years worth of work, and I've tended to work on different scales from small things to larger things, but it was a chance to really bring everything together, and I've shown a lot in Europe. I've shown a lot. In France and in Germany, but I haven't in my hometown, where I'm kind of on the ground as an artist. I mean, this is really my community.
And you're intimately involved in this installation.
Absolutely, yeah. I worked very closely with Scott Rothkopf, and Scott was great to work with. But we worked really closely, and we worked on it for close to 5 years.
But it is true that it's not easy to put your stuff up, because of size and weight and delicacy. And you need technology, and you need a bunch of other things. Yes.
That's correct. That's correct. And, the Whitney was fantastic to work with. They never said no, that, maybe if I would have said I would like to show this work, they never said, oh, well, we can't do that. There's a problem with the budget. There's a problem with, having that expense. They were fantastic.
You were working right up until the end. I mean, you completed some of these. How many months before they were installed?
Oh, some of them days. I mean, months, that's a lot of time.
It's not just a retrospective.
Yeah. I mean, Play-Doh we finished.
It's an up-to-date retrospective.
Yeah. I mean, we just finished.
Play-Doh was just finished.
Yeah, we just finished that. Painting
Liberty.
At the Liberty Bell we just finished too. We probably finished that inside the museum, some of the pieces there. But, that's kind of natural. You work on things and you try to put as much energy into them as you can and finish them to the highest level that you can.
You don't want people to be intimidated by art.
Absolutely not, yeah. I remember my first day of college, and again, I had no idea what art could be. And as soon as I arrived at school, we basically signed our papers that were enrolled. And we got on a bus and we went to the Baltimore Museum. And when we got there, I went inside the museum and I looked at paintings, and I didn't know any of the artists. I didn't know Braque. I didn't know Cézanne. I didn't know Matisse. I would have known Picasso. I would have known Dali. And I feel like I survived that moment. And a lot of people are destroyed by that. They don't survive that moment. And I always wanted to make work that people would not feel that they had to bring anything to the table other than who they are and who they are up to that moment, that they're perfect, that, the art is about them, it's about their possibility, and to empower people not to disempower by you have
That's
to know
my
this.
point about, I mean, when you said first it's about me, but that's my point about, I mean, you really care about how people respond to art and to your art. You know, what impact it has on them.
First, I care about my experience
Right,
first because I love to make the things. I love the expansion. I love the transcendence that I feel, expanding my parameters, my interests, my feeling. But then I want to share that. And so it's not that I set out to make something. It's not a conscious way of going about. It's very, very intuitive. I follow my interests, and I focus on those interests. And it takes me to a really kind of very metaphysical place that I come into contact, I think, with archetypal, universal kind of language.
If somebody writes a piece and says, Jeff's work lacks intellectual rigor, do you give a damn?
Well, I care in that I never want to lose anybody. And when I say that, I really believe I'm involved in communication. And I'm trying as a human being, to the best of my abilities, to my limitations, to make the best work I can and to try to bring about something positive and informing, to my life and to the community. So I never want to lose anyone. I know my intentions, my moral intentions are sound, and I really want to try to contribute something. So I feel like I've lost somebody, but do I care past that? I go on.
Yeah.
I just go on.
And words like showman and salesman?
I go on. I mean, I know that there's a certain visual quality, there's an attractive quality, an attention quality, maybe like a spotlight quality. But in a way, that's just to compete with the rest of the world. I mean, you have Hollywood, or you have all these other realms of information, and they attract attention. My works they enjoy the presentation of themselves. So.
But I mean, you once said that you like the idea of selling.
Well, I think sales is kind of the front line of society. I mean, it's the kind of the moral front line of society. My Hoovers really are making reference to the door-to-door salesman. That would come knocking
and sell you a vacuum cleaner.
And so it's kind of like the front line there.
Yeah, exactly. You said front line of morality, and also, and everything else in the culture, that it was, in fact, a kind of way of connecting.
Yeah. As a child, I was brought up to be self-reliant. And I would sell drinks on a golf course, I would go door to door selling gift wrapping paper and, kind of a lot of the images that are in my celebration work. Bows, ribbons, candies. So, I learned to be kind of self-reliant. And then automatically when you're self-reliant, you want to go outside yourself and you become more involved in your society and your community.
But you're huge now. I mean, some people have written, I'm thinking of Carl Swanson in New York Magazine, said, the art establishment doesn't just ignore the work of the unknown artists, but also, for the most part, that of the world famous, especially Koons and others who have become so big and so rich, it no longer seems important to have opinions of them. Can you appreciate that? That you really, you stand above the art establishment.
Well, it's... I don't know about that. I mean, I always just wanted to participate, Charlie. The idea, like the avant-garde, I wanted to get in there. I wanted to be in there and have a dialogue with Dali and Lichtenstein and Picabia and Picasso and just be part of this dialogue. I mean, that's what's really exciting and rewarding. I don't think that things are that big. Not in this...
You don't think you're that big?
I think that I have a platform as an artist.
I just cited the fact you sold highest price. I'm just excited the fact you're having a retrospective in an entire museum. That, by any artist's imagination, is huge.
Yes. I mean, it's a tremendous platform. But at the same time, I want to do something. I mean, I really want to do something.
It's not about being huge. It's about doing something.
Yeah. It's about becoming. And, I really want to make my work. I want to make work that really can affect the lives of people. I really believe in mobility. I've made bodies of work on mobility. I believe in enlightenment. And I hope the viewer comes across my work and is stimulated in whatever manner. Eric Kendall, our friend, right, speaks about the beholder's share.
Right.
And so, they can come, they can look at a work, and I can have certain information being communicated to them, but that then, it's about themselves. It's about their interests, their desires, and that they can walk away feeling stimulated and feel that they can expand, their life. I mean, that's really what I'm interested in.
But at the same time, there's the reality of what impact you have. I mean, David Werner was here, and he said that you are a catalyst of our culture, a catalyst of our culture. And that when a viewer engages with your work, you really know where we are and what we are.
It's, as a human being, as an artist, I try to be honest, and I just try to go about my life and make the works about the things that I respond to. And, I have a family that's really important to me. And, so my life is about being with them and enjoying life, looking at things. But so I go about and I look at things, and what I respond to, I carry with me. And then eventually I'll make a gesture and I'll make an artwork based on those interests. And usually things resonate for maybe up to about 2 years before I actually make the gesture. I'm thinking about things, and finally it will be of a relevance to me that, okay, I'm ready.
People talk about, a kind of sixth sense, that your ability to somehow identify or nail an image or an object as something that captures the zeitgeist of the moment. Do you feel any of that? That's what's happening?
All of these things, as an artist, it's nice. It's flattering to hear some of it. I look back, and I have to say I'm proud of some of the works, and I think that some of them today look kind of iconic. I think the rabbit looks iconic. I think,
and has an impact beyond itself.
But if this is happening, Charlie, I remember when I first had some success, and I was interviewed, and somebody said to me, Jeff, okay, you have success right now. Aren't you afraid you're going to lose it? Yeah. And I thought, it was such an odd thing to say to a young artist who just had that kind of success. Yeah. So I started to think about, what do I do? What is the process that I do as an artist? And I think that the process is the same for whatever anybody does, whether you're an artist or whether you're a mathematician or whatever. And I think the only thing you can do is follow your interests. So I follow my interests. And from my childhood in Pennsylvania, whatever my parents and my extended family kind of directed me, that I follow my interests and I focus on those interests.
Yeah. Dolly was an influence.
Dolly was an influence, and he was an influence by representing an internal journey that I learned to go inward and to accept myself. I mean, kind of Dada and surrealism. It's all about this kind of inward journey, the beginning of the 20th century. And also his generosity as a person. When I was about 18, I called him up. I learned that he stayed at the St. Regis Hotel. And I called him and I asked if I could visit him. And he answered, the phone and said, yes, come up on Saturday. I'll meet you in the lobby. And sure enough, he was there. And he asked me if I would go to the Knoedler Gallery, that he had an exhibition there. And I went there. He posed for some photos. And that generosity, just to this kid from Pennsylvania, I went home that night thinking, I can do this. I can participate too. I can live a life like this, where be involved with ideas and with art, and it can be a way of life. Tremendous generosity.
But you got to admit, it took something to call up Salvador Dali. I mean, not everybody calls him up at the hotel and says, Mr. Dali, this is Jeff Koons, and or this is, I just would like to meet you. I mean, it requires a certain, I think a quality of self. And when you look at the consequences it had, you realize that you could have that kind of life. That you'd have to work, and that you would have to be creative, and that you would have to, be fully engaged. But you could have that kind of life.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I've ever wanted. I mean, that's what I'm doing today. I mean, I'm trying to participate in this kind of tradition of kind of an extension of the avant-garde.
Was that what caused you to move to New York?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I came here originally. I went to art school in Baltimore, Maryland, and I went to the school, the Art Institute of Chicago, because I loved the Chicago Imagist, Ed Paschke and Jim Nutt, and I studied with a great art historian there, Whitney Halstead. But at a certain point, I wanted to stop going on an inward journey, and I wanted to be involved with more of an objective art. And so, I moved to New York.
And when did you become familiar with Marcel Duchamp?
In art school, but when I moved to New York, I would say that, when I was living here, I was getting more of an influence from Europe, of maybe Fluxus, and maybe the way the Europeans viewed Duchamp, getting a greater influence there through friends and poets that I would hang out with. And, I really started to look at the idea of the ready-made and Robert Smithson's work, Leo Castelli-Gowri, and Ileana Sonnabend, a huge impact, looking at, work.
Just soaking up things.
Yes, a sponge.
Yes. Where did the idea for the inflatables come from?
I believe that in my childhood, that around 3 or 4, that I put a vacuum cleaner in the toilet, and that I got into a little trouble. And that's my recollection.
You put a vacuum cleaner in the toilet?
In the toilet, and got into a little trouble.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of the vacuum and a sense of kind of breathing machines, or the first inflatable that I used was in a piece that I called I Told You Once. If I told you once, I told you twice. And it was a painting that I made that got so large I couldn't have it on the wall anymore, so I took it off the wall and I created a table for it to sit it on, and I put an inflatable elephant on one side and an inflatable panda bear. And it still had, and actually the first time I used porcelain too, I had a little porcelain figurine there. And so it has a lot of main kind of images and materials that I even like to work with today. But that would have been in late 77.
You and I have talked about this before, but I'd love to, in the context of the retrospective, talk about it. Made in Heaven, and your relationship and your son, who you in a sense lost through court battles to Italy. What impact did all of that have on you?
Well, when I ended up into kind of a custody situation with my son, he was born here in the States, and then he was taken illegally to Italy.
By his mother?
By his mother. And I was never able to get him back. And
an Italian Supreme Court, I think, finally decided that.
Well, I won custody, but he was there in Italy for so long that they wouldn't send him back. So it was a period that I was really losing confidence in humanity, and I had only my art to hang on to. And so that's what I hung on to. And I decided to make things to try to communicate to him that if not at this moment, in the future, he could realize how much I was thinking about him. But at the same time, I wanted to make works that could hold up in a larger context of making art, because at the same time, I wanted to be his dad, who's also an artist, performing on, a level of making great works. But a piece like Play-Doh, my son Ludwig, I brought him some Play-Doh during a visitation, and he made a mound, and he said, "Dad," and I turned, I said, "What?" And he went, "Dad, look, voila." And I looked at this mound of Play-Doh, and Charlie, it was everything that I try to do every day of my life, to make something that you couldn't make any judgments about. What is it going to, is it too much red, too much blue, is the shape right? It was perfect. I mean, and so, I ended up going back to my studio and making that mound. But a balloon dog, I think that there's a mythic quality in balloon dog. There's an interior kind of dark quality to it, a little bit like a Trojan horse, you know. So, so that series, I was trying to maintain my confidence, my belief in humanity, to show my son how much I loved him, and at the same time to be performing on, the highest level that I could.
Is your attraction to his mother simply what's always about people who attract each other? You can't explain it. It just has its own notion that only the two of them understand?
You mean to Ilona
Yes.
at the time? Yeah, Ilona was, an extremely beautiful woman. She was very attractive. And when we started the Made in Heaven photo shoots,
Right.
I hired her as a model. And, she was very, very vulnerable. She was telling me how she got involved in pornography as a very young woman and how she really wanted a different life. And, we fell in love. And, we ended up in a short period of time. We had Ludwig. And, eventually we realized that this wasn't going to work out. But, I was in love with Ilona.
Did Made in Heaven help or hurt your career?
That I don't know. I mean, as an artist, I think I became a better artist. I think that I made images. I love the bourgeois bust. It's based on a Hunan sculpture of a couple kissing. The paintings, I'm very proud of the paintings. So I'm proud of the works, and I think I came out of it a better human being, I have my wife Justine today and my family. She's my muse today. And so I have a really very, very happy love life.
What about Warhol? What influence did he have?
Andy, when I came, to the city, I never wanted to, go to the factory or hang out. I mean, I looked up at the window already and saw him there and was kind of like, wow, there's Andy. And I met him superficially twice, Studio 54 and once in an elevator somewhere.
Right.
So I knew that, there's a dialogue and the relevance of his work. I always thought of Duchamp as kind of the grandfather, and he had a kind of a son, and you have Andy, and then, I'm kind of a grandson then, So kind of following in a tradition of the ready-made and that dialogue.
And today, I mean, we'll go to talk about some of the specific pieces, but I mean, today, you're a physical nut. I mean, you work out. You're very concerned about living a long and happy life because you had said you want to be as creative as you can into your late 80s.
I have all these children, too.
Yeah.
I have
How
all
many,
these
8
kids.
now? Is it 8 or 9?
I have a total of 8, but I have 6 young ones at home, and they range from almost 2, just next month one will be 2, and to Justine, and my oldest is 13.
But and when you look to the future, what do you think? I mean, it is the work.
It's the life,
The life.
It's the life, and a major portion of my life is the work. My mental interest, what I can have my life become, what human being I can become, what I can give to my society, to my culture, it's through the work. And so, I would say the last decade, especially, the kind of idea of more of an internal aspect, that the subjective and the objective really become full circle. They kind of encircle each other. And so I live a way of just going about my life kind of daily, with not under a lot of pressure. I have to do something today, and just have my kind of goal set to make the pieces that I want to make when I'm thinking about, and to do them.
Does anything bother you?
Well, I would say stagnation, bothers me. I think injustice bothers me, I do think that I'm been involved with the work that's very much about kind of leveling. I've tried to make art accessible for people that, not accessible in that dumbing something down. I'm trying to enrich myself and my vocabulary of art every day to the fullest that I can, to know more about antiquities and what art can be. I mean, Charlie, that's really what I'm involved with, is what art can be. And to try to make art something as vital and as engaged in our lives as possible. But I think I've been involved in this high-low discourse and trying to make art that everybody can not feel intimidated by it, but can have an experience that's absolutely to the capacity that at that moment they're ready for.
Let me talk about some of the images we have here. Number one, this is the inflatable flowers, which is 1979. Just tell me about this.
When I first moved to New York, and I started to become very influenced. I was looking at the work by Robert Smithson and Robert Morris, and so I sold these inflatable flowers in a showroom, and this showroom only sold inflatables.
Yeah.
And they were sold for inflatable flowers for modern home decor.
Yeah.
Now, my father, Henry Koons, was an interior decorator, and so I grew up that he would just display objects in his furniture store. You know, just have a light displaying itself as a light, or an ashtray, a table's a table. So I was intrigued by just displaying these objects, making these setups, and let them just display themselves. I think that if you look at it, it's kind of metaphoric, as one's kind of feminine and one's a little more masculine.
Yeah. Okay, next to Hooper.
This is a double-decker.
Yes.
And, you know, these pieces, I was displaying objects for their newness. And this was an ultimate state of being. And to confront the viewer with aspects of, you know, mortality and the strengths of something that's inanimate against something that's animate. And these objects display their integrity of birth from, I would unpack them. I would put them in this display case, this kind of white, cool light display, and they're displaying their integrity of birth.
This is a one-ball total equilibrium tank.
After making the vacuum cleaner pieces, I wanted to make a body of work, the equilibrium work, that was more biological. And so this is a little more masculine way of looking at consumerism too. But this is pre-birth. This is before the new. And it's also after death. I mean, this is really kind of a timeless situation here. Again, an ultimate state of being. And the ball's in equilibrium. It's just hovering in a fish tank.
Now, did you consult with Richard Feynman about this?
Yeah, I did, yes.
They're great.
Yeah. You know, I saw some paper that you put in the back of a fish tank, and I thought, I'm going to draw a basketball on that. And that was the beginning of kind of equilibrium. And I thought, well, how can I have this state of equilibrium where the ball can be there forever? And I read in Time magazine that Dr. Feynman enjoyed art. So I called him up, and he told me I could do it, that I could have a basketball hover in a fish tank in equilibrium in one liquid. And so I kept looking. I searched. I continued to be in contact with him, but it's really impossible. I mean, silicon oil is the liquid with the greatest density gradient on itself, and I would need a much higher tank than the fish tank. But he was fantastic, and I ended up using just very pure sodium. So there's a density gradient. It's not a homogeneous solutions to separate solutions. But the way light travels through the water, it's very hard to see that the water down below is heavier because of sodium. And so the ball is too light to sink to the bottom, but it's too heavy to go to the top. Perfect.
I love the idea you just called up Richard Feynman and said, I read where you loved art, and my name is Jeff Koons, and I'd love to.
Yeah, he was great. And I was in the library. I was calling Green at MIT. I was calling all of these doctors and professors.
To understand equilibrium.
And to try to achieve it. Now, I wasn't able to achieve permanent equilibrium. And I could have two immiscible liquids where the ball would always be there, but it would not have the purity of the womb. So I wanted to stay one liquid, and really I want to stay with water.
Okay, so with the inflatables, we saw inflatables and the pre-new. With the Hoover, we saw the new. We now saw with the basketball Equilibrium. The next one is Aqua Bacardi 1986. This is from Luxury and Degradation.
I was riding the subway in New York, and I realized that depending on the stops and the economic environment of the city, that advertising was using abstraction at different levels depending on the income level of that location. So people who at that time made $10,000 or less would see images like a Cuba Bacardi. And the type of abstraction taking place here is, it's like, take your weekly paycheck, gamble, throw things up in the air, take things as they come. Right. It's really about risk, and that's the form of abstraction. As you would go up economically and to a higher level of society, which was Grand Central Station, they would have a Frangelica. And a Frangelica painting, you would get to an image like that, and you would be hit with a much heavier form of abstraction, where it would just be like a wave of liquor. And there would be a little sexual information in the wave, but you would also be disconnected from your society. It would just say, like, stay in tonight, or another Frangelica ad, find a quiet table. You're totally disconnected.
How long is it between idea and execution?
I think things generally resonate for about 2 years, And what I'm carrying around for a period of time, I would have a show every 2 years sometimes. But the information that I'm getting ready to maybe start to make a gesture on, been carrying for 2 years, but there's some overlap there.
Okay, take a look at this. This is Louis XIV. 1986, from the series Statuary.
I found Louis XIV on Canal Street. And, Canal Street used to have a lot of plastics, and so it was a fiberglass cast. And it was probably for a restaurant or somebody's backyard, a fiberglass. And I saw Louis, and maybe a couple days later I saw a small statue of Bob Hope. And when I saw Bob Hope and Louis, I realized they're the two ends of a dialogue, kind of a panoramic view that, if you give art to a monarch, eventually it'll become reflective of their ego and become decorative. And if you give art to the masses, it'll reflect mass ego, which Bob Hope represented. Of telling a joke, he would tell it not because maybe subjectively he thought it was funny, but because he got the biggest joke the night before in Vegas. But and that eventually become reflective of mass ego. And it was really that the same thing would happen to the artist. It was really about losing control of the art.
Yeah. This was made for your first show at the Sonnabend Gallery, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Wow.
My rabbit was part of the statuary exhibition.
What impact have dealers had in your life?
They've been very important. They've been great. Collaborators. I think one of the things that I always tried to do, Charlie, was I would direct my work to dealers that had interest in the same areas that I had interest. I mean, I wouldn't have interest in, say, photo narrative work and go to a dealer that just showed abstraction.
Right.
I think a lot of artists, make the mistake of they go and they get involved in a community that can really have very different interests than what they have. And so the community, all the artists and friends, we'd sit around and we'd talk about art and have some beers and, you discuss art. And it's really like a whole generation in a way, moving forward with their ideas, the way they see the possibilities for art, the way they see the world.
Okay, the next image is Michael Jackson in Bubbles, 1988, from the series Banality. Tell me about Michael Jackson.
The Banality show, I made a piece right before making Banality, which was the Kip and Curl. And it was a piece that was a fiasco. I made a mold on a ready-made statue, and when I cast it, it got banged up against the wall to get the ceramic shell off, and it deformed the piece. And I had to decide whether to not be in a major international exhibition and show the work, to drop out, or to give it a kind of radical plastic surgery, and to work with this ready-made object and make it presentable. And for me, up to this moment, everything we've been looking at, Charlie, that you've been showing images of, they're ready-mades. Everything pre-exists in the world. And so I would work with something, and I would try to maintain every aspect of it, every flaw, every perfection, to try to maintain it. And when this kip and curl became such a failure, it freed me, because I realized that it was just metaphor. And what I really cared about was people. I cared about the viewer. And they were the ready-made. And people, it's about their flaws, their perfections, that they are perfect. And I was just freed. And it was a tremendous experience. So I made Michael Jackson in bubbles. I made all of these works that tried to communicate very clearly to people that their own cultural history was perfect.
Is this in any way indebted to Pieta?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's Renaissance sculpture. It's the triangle, and I thought about it as the Pieta. It also has an Egyptian quality to it, a little bit like King Tut, or you got like almost the three pyramids of Giza there.
All right, here's one we already talked about, Made in Heaven, with you and Ilona.
This was a large billboard. After Banality, I had a huge success with that show, and people would say that it was like equivalent to Roy Lichtenstein's show that he had in '64 or something. And so I really kind of became an art star. And but at the same time feeling that culturally not being very relevant in participating in American culture. And so film industry, entertainment industry, standard has been kind of looked at as being culturally significant. So I thought maybe I'll just put another star on my shoulder, and the easiest way would be film. And the Whitney asked me if I would have interest in participating in an exhibition called Image World, and if I wanted to make billboards for the city. And I could do anything I wanted on the billboard. And I said, sure. So I thought, I'll call that Italian politician, the woman that... I used some images of Ilona.
You'd seen her in a magazine.
I saw her in a magazine. I actually used an image of a dress that she wore in one of my Banality sculptures called Fête d'Hiver. And so I thought, I'll call that woman up, and I'll just, use her kind of as a ready-made, use her sets as a ready-made, the whole situation. And I'll just put myself in there, and we'll make it like we're making a film. And I thought, I'll call it Made in Heaven, starring Jeff Koons and Cicciolina. And so I called her up, I hired her, and this is what came out of it. That's right.
Fell in love.
Yeah.
Okay, next one is Balloon Dog, Yellow. This is 1994 to 2000, one of the more famous, I think.
Yeah. It's like a child's birthday party, you blow up a balloon. But I've always enjoyed inflatables. I've enjoyed vacuum cleaners, things dealing with lungs, breathing. It's kind of anthropomorphic. It relates to...
And when you have said also, but when it's exhausted, when the air goes out, it's almost an imagery for death.
Yes, now it's optimism, it's...
Yeah,
it's going to be like that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and so it has that very strong optimism, and it's mythic. But yes, when an inflatable loses its air, it's a symbol of death.
Now, the form is similar to a Trojan horse. Is that also sort of an image or an idea of darker themes?
I think that when I would just use stainless steel and polish the surface, that it's more about the surface. You're not so involved in the interior life of that object. But in celebration, like with the balloon dog and the moon, the different metal celebration pieces, when I give this transparent coating to it, they become darker. They develop an interior life. And so there is a darkness there. There's more of an internal quality.
This is also from Celebration. This is Play-Doh, 1994 to 2014. That shows you how long it took to make it. The sculpture that we see on the mound of Play-Doh is the one that Ludwig, you mentioned before, constructed, right, and gave to you.
Well, he made a mound. I mean, he didn't make this exact one.
Yeah, I know, but something like that.
But he made a mound. He made that mound and went,
But that mound is connected to the inspiration for this, or
That's right. Yeah, so I went back to my studio, and I made this mound. And then I recreated it. I enlarged it. Originally, I was going to put it in polyethylene. And polyethylene's a material that a lot of times they'll make toys for children where they can have their own car or a playhouse in the backyard. They kind of have adult fantasy. But as I continued to work on the model, I gave it undercuts where I no longer had this 2%, 3% draft that I kind of needed to pull the mold. Right. And so I made the conscious decision to just keep going, making it hyper-realistic. And I ended up changing to put it into aluminum then. I think that Play-Doh, to me, kind of represents the 20th century. It's kind of Freudian, the mounds just kind of piled up on top of each other. It's kind of very Freudian type quality. Right. And it has an interior being too. I mean, each mound has an inside facing top, bottom, how they construct itself organically. And so it has a Freudian quality and also kind of like a de Kooning type quality. But I think it kind of has a 20th century fullness.
I reference again, not 10 years, but 20 years, between 1994 and 2014. 20 years at work on this.
Yeah.
The next one is Split Rocker, orange and red, 1999. This is from the series Easy Fun.
In my bedroom at home, my son had a rocking horse. Yeah. And I would look at the rocking horse and where the mold seam line between the rocking horse and, the two sides of it ran right down the center. And one day I was walking around and I saw this dyno rocker. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to cut the rocker down the center and to put these two profiles together. Now, this is also during the time of the divorce custody, so I think that I can look at it and realize that kind of one is kind of, maybe myself, maybe one's the ex-wife, or at least a sense of division of what was taking place. And, the line that happens in between is where these two forms come together. I always thought Picasso and Lichtenstein would kind of appreciate, because you can try to draw it and define it, but the only way is really to kind of experience it.
One more slide. This one is Junkyard 2002.
A painting, and I've always been a painter. When I went to art school, I always studied painting. I had never studied sculpture. I made my first sculptures when I moved to New York, those inflatable flowers.
Right.
And so I'm always making paintings, and these are kind of montage of images. And when I was making the Easy Fun ethereal paintings, I would just go through, thousands of magazines, and I would just look at images. And if an image had some resonance to me, I'd pull the page. And I'd go on, I'd look through more magazines, and then I would start stacking them. I'd go through all these pulled pages, and I'd start making stacks where things felt like they went together. So I shot a photograph in the background of some junkyard somewhere. It was actually in Italy. And these other images ended up being in that pile, and that's how the painting is created.
Here's an example of how you have influenced the culture. This is a conversation on 60 Minutes. From my colleague Morley Safer. Here it is. This is a conversation. Eli Broad has been a great friend of yours and a great collector. Has lots of pieces. I mean, he have, 30, 40 pieces?
Yes. He's probably the largest collector at this time.
And a good moment he came in and was there for you when you needed a friend.
Absolutely.
Okay. Roll tape.
One of his favorite artists is the irrepressible Jeff Koons. And here, a veritable cornucopia of Koonsian genius. All, of course, painted and sculpted by hired craftsmen. Koons is nothing if not worshipful of Eli Broad.
Morley and Eli, I just have to say, standing here, what a fantastic location. I mean, look at the natural light that's coming in on these works. It's just a tremendous gallery.
And the balloon dog? What does it do to you? Do you get some kind of emotional kick?
I do. It makes me smile, makes me feel good. It makes me proud. It especially makes me proud when I see young people and others looking at the work. And it introduces them to art in a way that no other work really does.
And a piece that, quite honestly, mystifies me, Michael Jackson and a chimp, is it?
Michael Jackson Bubbles. When I made this series, the Banality series,
of banality?
Of images, I was trying to communicate to people that whatever you respond to, it's perfect.
If you find Koons' art speak incomprehensible, well, just wait.
These are to make references to be in the womb a little bit, before birth and prior to any kind of concept of death.
Do you totally get what he's talking about?
Not to the extent that Jeff does, but I do listen and understand and learn from artists, especially Jeff.
Now, what we should explain is that my friend Morley Safer had an ongoing conversation about what was art. And that for him, that was a passion. I mean, he did not just this, but a number of pieces about one very famous piece in which he questioned what exactly is art. Do you have a definition for him?
I think it's a vehicle that helps, that connects people with their internal life and the external world. That it's a vehicle which helps us fine-tune and understand our relationship with both the external and internal lives that we have.
And when the question comes up about you and Damien Hirst and others, having other people actually do the work, do you accept Damien's idea to me, and I think maybe you have said this as well, that architects design buildings and other people build them? How do you see the notion of your participation along with all these other people who work with you in creating a piece of art, in contrast to Picasso, who worked alone in a studio?
Charlie, I never just wanted to be in a room by myself. That didn't seem like a very interesting day. So I really like to be around people. But, I like to use this as an analogy, like the way I move my fingertips is the way of working with people. And it's really my responsibility to inform them exactly what I'm looking for and to set up systems so that they can perform exactly the way to exercise the vision that I have, and that you can articulate and achieve that goal. And it's no different than articulating and achieving the goal of moving my fingers just the way I am right now. And to be able to do that with people, to have an extension. I mean, I'm able to affect the lives of a lot of people. I work with hundreds of people. I mean, I'm not just working alone in a room. I have 130 people at my studio. There's another 100 and some people that work at the foundry in Germany and other companies I work with. So I'm affecting the lives of a lot of people. And we're involved with art. Everybody's getting a better understanding of art. And, we're creating these things. I first started also to work with people when I went to a foundry and to cast something. And I realized, I don't have a foundry. I don't have the facilities to cast it myself. So you learn how to work with people and to trust working with people.
Jeff Koons, a retrospective, is on view at the Whitney Museum of American Art until October 19, 2014. Someone once said, art is in the eyes of the beholder. Someone else has said, obviously, that every work of art affects everybody in a very, very different way. And that's what is remarkable about art, because somehow it is connected to your own sense of life and your own sense of how you see yourself and your experiences. It speaks to you in that context. Clearly, when one museum devotes its entire building at the time that it's making a huge move downtown, it is worth going. Nothing is more talked about in the art world today than what Jeff Koons has done in this retrospective. That alone is enough to make you want to say, what in the world are they talking about? Let me go experience for myself. It runs again until October 19th, 2014. I'm deeply appreciative of Jeff coming here for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.